Firstly, I'll be talking about the confusions that aspirants have while preparing for prelims. The thing that we need to do is to focus on the non-random syllabus or the static part. This concept as to atmosphere is heated by incoming radiation more or terrestrial radiation. So these kind of concepts are mentioned in geography NCERT. It is our important responsibility that we focus on each of these important static subjects equally, so that in any year, whatever subject it asks these questions, we should be able to capitalize it. For instance, there are several provisions that the Indian constitution borrowed from other constitutions. And we know other facts like there was bicameralism and other things. But we have not come across what were the subjects which were there under transferred subjects and what were the subjects that were under reserved subjects. So how do we answer this question? Just taking the example of polity, like I said, central government, parliament, Supreme Court, High Court, subordinate court, Panchayat Raj institutions, these are the important topics. When we give our marks over sectional, we need to see that we are getting decent marks over each of these subjects. When we are attempting institute paper, take it with a pinch of salt. Means, in simple words, what I mean is, no institute can match the UPSC paper. We need to understand that when we are giving institute test series, we need to understand that UPSC paper will be different and we need to be ready for that. In the actual UPSC paper, a similar question may be asked but in a different way. There is always this debate of luck versus hard work. We need to analyze that it is only hard work which is in our hands. Luck is not in our hand, and luck in general, luck does not favor everyone. Prelims season has begun. Aspirants have started their race towards prelims. Prelims is getting tougher year by year. So as aspirants, it is our prime responsibility that we upgrade our preparation, we strengthen our preparation year by year. So in this video, I shall be making a comprehensive prelim strategy for the year 2026. Hello everyone, my name is Shreyas and welcome to India4IAS. I'll be discussing in this video about the things that help me to crack multiple prelims. Like I said, I have cracked multiple times CSE prelims cutoff and IFOS prelims cutoff, and I'll be sharing the things that help me to crack it. Let us begin with the video. If I have to briefly summarize what I'll be doing in this video is that firstly, I'll be talking about the confusions that aspirants have while preparing for prelims. I'll try to debunk each of those confusions one by one. So as we move in this video, you will be getting more clarity over the process of prelims. So what are the confusions that aspirants commonly have in the market? Usually these are the confusions which I could commonly come across. UPSC is asking random questions. So what do? Do we need to read new book which covers it, or do we need to stick to our old books despite even if it doesn't cover it? Other confusion, what is the importance of static versus current affairs debate? Other confusion, we are doing hard work sir, but the marks are not increasing. So what is that we are doing wrong, or how do we increase our marks? This is another confusion that aspirants face. Similarly, how much time do we need to give exclusively for prelims? Exclusively in the sense you are preparing only for prelims. You are not doing any other thing in that point of time, neither mains or nor any other exam. Similarly, how many tests do we give before prelims? What is that standard number of tests that toppers give which help them to clear prelims? Similarly, what is the importance of PYQ relevance? What are the areas in which PYQ becomes important? Is it the content, is it the guesswork, or what else? Similarly, aspirants commonly come across confusions such as they tend to analyze the paper, but to what extent? Is it that information, new information that we need to gain from the paper, or is it the guesswork pattern? To what extent do we trust these papers? Are the institute paper they are matching along with the UPSC paper, or how is it? Similarly, there are so many topper strategies in the market. Which one do we choose? Other confusion. There are institute test series, but to what extent do we rely upon? Because they get low scores when they give mocks of institutes, which hampers their confidence while attempting the actual paper. So in that case, what is that the aspirant needs to keep in mind? Similarly, other confusion like when do I exclusively start preparing for prelims? Similarly, we tend to learn from our friends, we tend to learn from our peer group. So there are cases where aspirants say, my friend cleared prelims with 2 months preparation, right? So we'll be debunking each of these confusions as we move ahead. Let us carve our path from confusion to clarity. So let us take each of these doubt one by one and try to address it. So we know that the UPSC questions are becoming random year by year. So what is that we need to do? The thing that we need to do is to focus on the non-random syllabus or the static part. Every year UPSC with a bare minimum of 30 to 40 static questions it will be asking in the paper. So if we capitalize on these 35 to 40 questions, it will give us a good edge. So when there are these unpredictable questions asked, there is only a certain probability that we might get it right. There is no 100% chance of getting those questions correct. So, but if we focus on that static part, in that 35 to 40 questions, we can make that 70 to 80 marks in that section. And for the remaining 10 to 15 marks, we can focus or attempt the unpredictable or less known questions. Like I said, the importance of static, we can see in the polity, there is always questions asked from certain part of the syllabus more. For instance, there are more questions asked from central government, there are more questions asked from parliament, there are more questions asked from Supreme Court, there are more questions asked from subordinate court, there are more questions asked from Panchayat Raj. So it becomes our prime responsibility that we focus on the areas where more number of questions are asked. Just to oppose this fact, there are less number of questions asked from municipalities, there are less number of questions asked from constitutional bodies or non-constitutional bodies. So we need to prioritize our learning. Time is limited, our ability to put effort over a particular subject is also limited. So we need to prioritize the areas where there are more questions from the static and give lesser number of importance to areas where lesser number of questions have been asked rather than completely neglecting it. Similarly, if I have to speak of economic static part, in economy we know that banking is a very important subject, banking, balance of payment. So these are the areas where more number of questions are asked. So we need to focus more upon these areas and provide lesser focus to areas such as microeconomics, because microeconomics hardly one question is asked every 2 to 3 years. So even if we do not do it, the loss that we incur is very less. Similarly, in geography it is very important that we learn concepts from geography NCERT. When I am speaking of geography NCERT, I am speaking of mainly the two blue books, physical geography and Indian geography. So more number of questions are asked from that part, and in that area also we see that there are more questions from climatology, there are more questions from ocean currents, and there are less questions from geography, biodiversity part, so on. So this becomes important. Similarly, when we speak of modern history, we see that earlier UPSC was focusing on areas such as Indian freedom struggle or the important national movements that were there. But with time, it changed a little bit. In the year 22-23, we are seeing more number of tribal questions that were asked. So we need to see in what areas is this UPSC asking more questions when it comes to subjects. So similarly, we know that in ancient it is Indian Indus Valley civilization that is more important, Mauryas, Guptas, Vijayanagara. So in these areas we will have to focus more. And UPSC, if it has to go for an in-depth question, it would rather go in the topics which are more important rather than in topic which is less important. For instance, if I have to speak of Imperial Cholas, I would keep it as a pillar 2 and I would make this as pillar 1 because lesser number of questions are asked from this part. So if UPSC has to go for an in-depth or more depth question, it would rather go in these areas rather than this. Similarly, in medieval we know that Delhi Sultanate, Mughals are important. Similarly, in environment it is biodiversity, as to which are the critically endangered species, which are the species found in a particular national park or wildlife sanctuary, and so on. Similarly, climate initiatives. Every 1 year or other year, good number of questions asked from climate based questions. Moving ahead, so it becomes very important that when we are studying the static, we need to map important topics which are asked from each of these subjects and focus more on those topics compared to other topics. So this will help us to get good number of marks in the actual paper because good number of questions are appearing from these topics in the actual UPSC paper. Moving ahead, other than that, so whatever I have said, I will try to justify each of those with the help of PYQs. So like I said, this was 2025 paper. So there was a question on sedition, that sedition has become my religion. So it was said by Gandhi during which of this moment? See, this is a very simple fact. that is been mentioned in spectrum. So if we had a control over static, we would have easily answered it. It was during the salt satyagraha. Similarly, self-respect movement. It is a very simple static fact. Similarly, famous female figure in dancing girl, it was made of what? Bronze. See, these are static things. If we had control over this, we would have capitalized on these easy questions. Similarly, question over pardoning power, a simple question to be answered. Likewise, we can see such questions in every year question paper. 2024 question paper, constitution, it is just asking question over the parts. So this is a static part which is mentioned in a tabular column in Lakshmikant. Similarly, this concept as to atmosphere is heated by incoming radiation more or terrestrial radiation. So these kind of concepts are mentioned in geography NCERT. So like I said, the prime focus should have been on having a control over the static syllabus. Similarly, these are other questions to justify my point. Thickness of troposphere question as to is it more over the equator or is it more over the poles, and if it is more over the equator, then what is the reason for it? What are the products of volcanic eruption? Similar question as to in what direction does the isotherms deviate over ocean and over continents. All these questions are mentioned in NCERT. I remember in the year 2024, there were more static questions from geography NCERT. I got set A, and in set A, if you see question number 1 to question number 5, all the 5 questions were picked from geography NCERT. And as soon as I started attempting the paper, when I got the first 5 questions correct, I got extra prime confidence. So this is how it can boost your preparation. But like I said, year to year, the number of questions asked from each subject could vary. For example, when I personally saw it, 2024, some more geography NCERT static questions. But in the year 2025, there were more modern history and ancient history sort of static questions asked. So it is our important responsibility that we focus on each of these important static subjects equally, so that in any year, whatever subject it asks these questions, we should be able to capitalize it. Similarly, moving ahead. So when we are studying static books, what else can we do? We know that we need to study it, we need to revise it, we need to understand it. So what else is that we need to do which will help us? We need to study the concepts and we need to build an algorithm in our mind. What do I mean by this? I'll try to just an example. For example, when we are studying modern history, I was studying modern history and I came across this article which said that modern history, there was an article written as new lamps for old, new lamps for old, and there are options that this person could have written it. So when I read this new lamps for old, what is that came to my mind? The instant thing that came to my mind is there were a certain old leaders that were already predominant, and there were leaders who wanted to replace those leaders, guide the Indian freedom struggle. And when this thing came to my mind, all I could think was this moderator versus extremist competition. So there were extremists who wanted struggle, such as boycott and satyagraha sort of thing, compared to the modern passive form of resistance. So for this article, what came to my mind? The immediate thing which came to my mind is maybe it could have been one of the extremists. So if you know static syllabus as to who are the extremists, Lal, Bal, Pal and Aurobindo Ghosh. When I saw the options, there was only Aurobindo Ghosh extremist present in the option. Answer to this was Aurobindo Ghosh. So when we study static, what is that thing we need to do? We need to do a reverse study. So when we study new lamps for old, we remember that it is by Aurobindo Ghosh, but we need to do the reverse thing. We need to think why is that Aurobindo Ghosh would have written such an article. Similarly, if I have to speak of another thing in modern history, I was discussing in one of the tests about Lex Loci Act of 1850. When we are studying, if we develop a certain sort of perception, then it will help us in answering the question. You call it perception, you call it intuition, or you call it as biasness. it is alternatively fine, but it is what algorithm means. So when I saw this question, Lex Loci Act of 1850, there were 4 options given in the actual, when I saw in the test paper. So Lex Loci Act of 1850. So there was options which said that it could have, Lex Loci Act of 1850 refers to bringing mass based education in India. It wanted to enhance women's participation in education in India, and so on things. But when we use a, we understand that it was during 1850. So it is the British who made the law predominantly, and by biasness or intuition we know that British would try to do something which would benefit them rather than improvising the Indian society as a. So Lex Loci Act of 1850, there was only one option in that question which said that it, and the other 3 options were in such a kind that it would benefit India. So Lex Loci Act of 1850, this question was that the British allowed Christian converts to inherit their property because it would benefit the British, because they wanted Hindu conversion to that point of time. So in this, even if you use the intuition or biasness, it will help us. Applying the same logic, if you see the PYQ, there was a question on Desh or Katha, that it was the options that were given. So use the same logic, Desh, Katha. It would refer to something that would praise the Indians and try to justify the exploitation of the colonialism. So if we keep such thoughts in our mind, it will help us to solve the questions. Similarly, I will try to depict the same thing of algorithm through other subjects. Just like modern history, when we speak of polity, whenever we are studying about president, that president has so and so power, it is also important that we compare it with governor. When we study that president has pardoning power for death, instantly along with the president we need to recall about the governor. Does he have the power? Does not have the power? Whenever there is something over which the parliament has power, you need to compare it with central government. Can central government do it on its own, or why is the parliament needed? If parliament is needed, then why? If only central government can do, then why? Similarly, the powers of president and governor, like I said, the powers of Supreme Court and High Court. So we need to compare the things which are similarly situated and try to differentiate it so that we try to avoid confusion. Similarly, if I have to talk about this, when we have to remember about the things, for instance, there are several provisions that the Indian constitution borrowed from other constitutions. For example, if we keep in our mind about Germany, that under the Hitler regime there was autocracy. So what is that thing which we borrowed from Germany? It is the suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. So at this point of time, if we keep Hitler in mind, it becomes very easy for us to understand that this provision we would have taken from Germany and not from any other country. So these are the things how we could remember even the things which are very easy. Similarly, if I have to speak about other subject like environment, UPSC has given the names and it has PYQs, whether is it a butterfly, whether it is an insect, whether it is a caterpillar, and so on. So what does UPSC do? It will give certain names dash 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 in the question and ask what is it, A, B, C, D. So when we study certain things, we need to see what kind of name pattern it fits in. What do I mean by this? For instance, and Devara Kadu. So UPSC will give you such names and ask option A, is it wildlife sanctuary? Option B, is it national park? Option C, is it sacred groves? Or option D, is it saline lake? In this case, whenever you are studying this in a particular static material, see what is it relating to. If you see Devarai, something related to Devara related to the god, and Orans related to the tribe. So establishing a very intricate relation between tribes and the god. So when we look in this perspective, we can understand that these are sacred groves. And if you go Google and see all the names of the sacred groves, you will see a certain pattern through which you can understand that if the sacred groves are to be named, they will be named in this pattern. Likewise, if I have to speak about the other example, then let me take this question. For instance, UPSC could give names such as Tamil Yeoman, Blue Mormon, and ask as to what these are. It could be butterfly option A, butterfly option B, insect, option C, caterpillar, option D, bird, and so on. See, Yeoman, Mormon, and there are so many similar things over which the butterfly has been named. So, in the actual exam, you might have studied about 3 or 4 butterflies, but the UPSC could ask some other names. But if you know the pattern which it is been named, you will be able to understand that there is high chances that the answer is butterfly. So, in this way, you are supposed to study. Moving on, like I said, one thing is we need to build an algorithm in our mind, and it will help us to deduce the wrong options very easily rather than just rote learning. And also, we need to know that UPSC does not give the same statement that we study in the book. In one of the previous test discussion which we were discussing, there was a question on assertion and reasoning, which said that in assertion it was said the lengthiest written constitution is that of India, which is a correct fact. In the reasoning, it said that the Indian forefathers wanted to keep the constitution comprehensive. But when we study Lakshmikant, the reason for this is stated slightly differently. It said that it is lengthy because there is diversity in India. It said it is lengthy because large number of legal lawyers that were there. So, if completely stick our mind to the static part or the rote part, then we will not be able to see the broader reality. So, the answer to that question is not mentioned in our book. So, try to detach from the book in certain questions where you need to think very broadly. Similarly, your perception of the concepts and the perception, I tried to explain it before in modern history polity questions. Similarly, when we try to connect these things, it will also be helpful in the mains, definitely. Moving ahead. So, whatever I said, I tried to justify through another PYQ. So, in the this question has been picked from 2022 prelims paper. In the Government of India Act 1919, there was the provincial government subjects were divided into reserved and transferred subjects. Okay. So, which of the following were treated as reserved subjects? So, what is that UPSC is trying to understand through this question? We have not come across these facts directly. What is that do we know about 1919 Act? We know about 1919 Act that the provincial government had 2 subjects. It was called transferred subjects and reserved subjects, and this was called dual government. And we know other facts like there was bicameralism and other things. But we have not come across what were the subjects which were there under transferred subjects and what were the subjects that were under reserved subjects. So, how do we answer this question? Let us try to recall what static part we know. All we know is when it is reserved subject, it is said that it would be under the control of the governor and the executive council. When it is transferred subject, it would be under the control of ministers who are responsible for the legislature. So, like I said, take the perception which I said and think in that way. So, in the year 1919 Act, the British would try to keep important functions under their control and giving lesser number of important functions to the house, because in the house there was more Indianization, there were Indians. So, there were good number of Indians in the house. So, they wouldn't like to share the real power with the Indians. So, just to act as a rubber stamp, they would give certain functions which are less important or less relevant to them and share it with the legislature which was responsible. And they would keep more important functions with the governor general. So, if we have to think in that direction, we know that among these 4 functions, land revenue was a very important function without which they could not take active steps, and police was definitely needed to curb the protest and curb the actions of Indians against the British. So, if we knew that reserved subject was under the governor, then our biasness would tell that they would try to keep the subjects which are very important of the governor, so that they can store it without being responsible to the legislature. So, in that sense, police and land revenue would be the first thing that we would have selected. So, in this question, if we have to choose between 1 and 2, choose the one which is more important. local self-government and administration of justice. Local self-government would mean that they wanted to improvise the rural development, wanted to focus upon the vulnerable section, wanted to uplift the woman. These were the functions. Now, British did not have a direct benefit from this. They did not want the development of India. Rather, they wanted the development of the colonial interest. So, administration of justice would mean that they would have laws to their control. They would use judiciary to favor themselves. So, in this, if I have to choose something which would benefit British more, then easily we could have said answer is 1, and answer is 134. So, only and only if we knew static part, that reserved list was under the control of Governor and Executive Council. So, only if we knew this question. So, it is the static, it is our control over static that will help us to answer the question. Similarly, other confusion which the aspirants face is that aspirants are doing hard work, but the returns are not proportional. So, why does this happen? See friends, if we take the wrong direction, we will definitely go towards the wrong destination. So, what is that wrong direction which an aspirant might take? Like I said previously, there are important topics and there are less important topics. See, just taking the example of polity, like I said, central government, parliament, Supreme Court, High Court, subordinate court, Panchayat Raj institutions, these are the important topics. If an aspirant is focusing equally on the important and less important topics, then he'll be wasting more time on the less important topics. Like I said, less important topics would include constitutional bodies, non-constitutional bodies, municipalities. So, someone who is giving more time over the topics on which UPSC has asked recurrently, he'll be getting more marks. So, even if you put same number of effort but in the wrong direction, then you may not increase your marks. Other reason as to why despite putting the effort he might not be able to gain marks is like he is giving 40 to 50 tests but he has not cleared prelims. So, why is that this happen? Because there will be a certain degree of difference between the institute test series and the UPSC paper. So, there are aspirants who only give institute test papers and go and attempt the UPSC paper, and they are not able to get the good marks as they got in the institute paper. So, it is very important. I have suggested it even in the previous video that 1 week before the prelims, it is very important that you give only PYQs so that you are acclimated to the UPSC way of thinking. I will be talking about it as we go on. Like I said, scoring well in the test series but not the actual exam. So, despite putting effort, if you are not studying the important part of the syllabus, if you are not focusing well on the static, and if you are not focusing on the PYQs, then despite putting effort, there is a good chance that you may not clear prelims. So, this is what is said, hard work. Hard work would just mean that we are focusing on the important part, we are focusing on the static part, we are revising more rather than just studying on, and also we are focusing on the UPSC PYQs. This is what is the smart work mean. Similarly, moving ahead, another question which aspirant faces. So, after giving a mock test, sir, we analyze the paper, but how many hours do we do? To what extent do we analyze? So, let us try to address those things now. First things first, UPSC does not pick questions from any test series. UPSC will pick questions from the original documents. There are so many programs, there are so many things or concepts which are important. So, those important things will be covered by the institute test series. So, this is how there could be a coincidence that what you studied in institute could also be asked by UPSC. But we cannot expect the same way the questions asked in the institute that it would say in the same way reflect in UPSC paper. So, what is that thing that we need to learn when we are giving institute paper? See, the main thing is when we are giving an institute paper or when we are analyzing the paper, the things that we need to focus on. When we have given a particular test, after the test, we need to analyze the above things. First, if we are able to attempt the questions properly, especially the questions which you have studied. You have studied a particular question from Spectrum, you have studied a particular question from Lakshmikant. Are you able to answer those questions when you gave the mock? If you are able to answer, it's fine. If you are not able to answer it, that means that you need more clarity or more revision of the subject. Second thing, you need to see if you are able to do good amount of guesswork. You are doing guesswork in the mocks, is it working or is it not working? So based upon that, you will be able to calculate the number of questions that you need to attempt in the actual exam. There are aspirants who attempt lesser number of questions, get good marks. There are aspirants who attempt more number of questions and get good marks. How do we know how many questions do we attempt? It is through this mocks. Similarly, like I said, you need to see if you answered things rightly or not. If you answered things rightly, then it means that you have control over the static, or else you need more revision. Similarly, you need to see how well your guesswork has worked. Similarly, there is another thing where you need to focus on the subjects where you get less marks. Usually we see that aspirants tend to focus more on subjects which they like. In general, aspirants like polity, they like economy, but comparatively they give less number of time over subjects like ancient and medieval, over IR, over mapping. But even these areas are important to clear prelims. So when we give our mocks over sectional, we need to see that we are getting decent marks over each of these subjects. In case if we are getting less marks in a particular subject, then we need to give more time over the subject so that even these subjects are at par with others. Another most important thing when we are giving mocks or when we are analyzing the paper, we need to see that we need to understand if our thinking pattern is in sync with the UPSC. Like I said, the question setter differs. In UPSC there is a different question setter, and when it comes to institutes, each institute will have their own different question setter. But we need to see if a thinking pattern, if the way of asking of questions of the institutes, if it's in sync with the UPSC. Because if there is a wide divergence, then in the actual exam, you might try to attempt in a way by thinking similar to those of institute. So a word of caution, choose the good test series. Similarly, moving ahead, so another confusion is every now and then we see on YouTube about the prelim strategy that pops up on the screen. So every topper has its own strategy. There are toppers who give 60 days, there are toppers who give 120 days, and there are toppers who give 90 days. So which one do we choose? There are toppers who give 20 tests, there are toppers who give 50 tests. So which one do we choose? There is so much of confusions. So it is generally suggested or it is widely accepted that we need to accept or adopt a strategy which has worked for majority of the people. Suppose if 100 students have cleared prelims, there would be that predominant strategy which would have worked for 70 students, and there would be another strategy which has worked for 20 students and another strategy which has worked for 10 students. And it is, if you want the, we should try to adopt that strategy which has worked for 70% of the students. So what is that strategy? If you have to simply put up things which has worked most of the toppers, then it is that they had focused on the static, they had done the revision well, they had given good number of mocks, and they went with a cool and calm mind in the actual exam hall. This is what has worked for most of the aspirants, and if you want the safest strategy in the market, then this is one. We study a static well, we revise it well, we give good number of mocks, then we do PYQ analysis. This is another most important thing which I forgot to tell, PYQ. So these are the things which most of the toppers have done and it has worked for them. Now there will be certain toppers, this 10%, who would have said that they gave only 5 to 10 tests and they cleared prelims. See, it could have worked for them and they could have some individual skills. They might be good at critical thinking or brainstorming, they could be more analytical, or that person might have more memory. So rather than adopting these strategies, it is important that we go for these. Similarly, another thing which I wanted to tell, like accuracy with less questions versus more questions with smart guesswork. Aspirants are confused between this. Accuracy with less number of questions could be someone is attempting 70 questions versus there is someone who attempts 90 plus questions. So which person are you? Are you a person with more accuracy or are you a person with good smart guesswork? So how do you know this? That is why I said when you give the mocks, try both of this. In one test, you try attempting 70-75 questions. In another test, you try attempting 90 to 95 questions. see in which paper do you get more marks. This is one way of doing it. In another way of doing it, what you could do, take the same paper, in 1 hour 45 minutes, try to attempt 70 questions, and in the next 15 minutes try to attempt that 15 extra question which you wanted to attempt. Then see sum up the marks. Are you getting more marks when you attempted 70 questions in the same paper, or are you getting more marks when you attempted 85 questions in the same paper? You yourself will know what is that thing which is working on you. And when you are doing this, please do not try it on 1 or 2 paper and generalize it that this is what you need to do. Practice it, give mocks, 15 mocks, 20 mocks, 25 mocks, and then determine what is that number of questions which you want to attempt. Obviously, this needs to be done with a bit of caution that every year UPSC difficulty will increase. In the year 2022, whoever had written the paper, they would have attempted more questions, say 85. But the year 2023, there was new set of questions that were asked. So in that paper, we would have attempted a little less, maybe 78 or 80. So it varies. But we need to have a broad range of understanding as to what is that number of questions that we attempt that I get the maximum marks. Similarly, which I said, what has worked for few may not work for few. So there are cases where both have worked, though with more unpredictable paper, aspirants are forced to take this. What do I mean by this? I am telling that both these strategies have worked. Aspirants with 70 questions have also cleared, and aspirants who attempt 90 questions have also cleared. So both the strategies are good, though in these days there is a predominance of people who are attempting more number of questions. And why is this thing happening? UPSC itself has shifted more from the static part towards the analytical part. And when these analytical questions are asked, it is very difficult to tell the exact answer. Often aspirants get confused between two options in 20 to 30 questions. And when that happens, there is a fair degree of luck that is needed to get more marks. So I personally also prefer this, but this has worked. There is no one way towards success, and you need to choose which one do you want. Are you a 70 question person, or are you a 90 plus question person? It is left to you, but both work in general, and we'll understand it by giving more mocks. Moving ahead. So like I said, this is another general thing. There are so many institutes which come up with their own prelims test series when prelims is approaching. So which one do we choose, or to what extent do we need to trust this institute paper? Will the similar questions asked in UPSC paper, or will similar way of thinking help us there? Let us try to know these things. Like I said, when we are attempting institute paper, take it with a pinch of salt. Means, in simple words, what I mean is, no institute can match the UPSC paper. UPSC is one of a kind. Every year its way of asking differs in a particular manner. Like I said, in the year 2020 it was very static. In the year 2021, polity it was analytical. In the year 2022, it was in a fair degree balanced. In the year 2023, it came with new set of questions like assertion reasoning, which were asked prior to 1990s. And also in the year 2023, the number of only 1, only 2, only 3, only 4 sort of questions was more than 30. So UPSC is one of a kind. We cannot predict or try to make a guess as to what topics or what kind of questions will be asked. The only reference is the PYQs that UPSC could ask this in a certain way. And when UPSC asked that only 1, only 2, only 3 sort of questions in 2023, the next year all the institutes try to replicate that thing. So we need to understand that when we are giving institute test series, we need to understand that UPSC paper will be different, and we need to be ready for that. So that is why UPSC is commonly said as unpredictable service commission, because you frankly do not know what is going to happen in the actual paper, what kind of questions will be asked. But we need to be ready to face those unpredictable questions, and we need to face those unpredictable questions when we are giving in the mocks, because when we attempt difficult questions in the mock test, then we will be ready to attempt those difficult questions in the actual UPSC paper. So other thing is, when you are getting low score in the institute, do you need to worry or do you not need to worry? See, when we are getting low scores in the institute test paper, see what is happening. If you are getting low score because of the knowledge, If you have studied that particular book, but still you're not those questions correct, then it is something that you need to worry, because you need rereading, you need to re-revise. But understand that if you are getting a particular question wrong because of the way you did guesswork in institute, then you need not worry to that extent. I'll try to justify this point through an example. See, you'll be given an institute test and there'll be questions in that. Suppose in a given question it is says that Asiatic lion is only found in Gir National Park. It is saying Asiatic lion is only found in Gir National Park, and in the institute material the answer to that question is correct. But in the actual UPSC paper a similar question may be asked, but in a different way, telling that snow leopards are found only in Hemis National Park of Ladakh. So when you studied that institute thing, you found that despite being only, it is been correct. And when you come across 2-3 questions of the institute where it was correct despite being only, you see UPSC paper, there is good chance that you might even consider this to be correct, but it is wrong. Hemis National Park, snow leopards are found in 3 to 4 national parks in general, but you might tend to think in the way you did for the institute same as you did in the UPSC paper. So this is what differs. Your thinking pattern should be based on UPSC PYQs and not on any institutes. So that is why I said there are certain institutes who try to sink in their guesswork with the UPSC, and there are certain institutes just to increase their difficulty, they try to keep very intrinsic traps in which you will get stuck and get low marks. So if that happens, there is no need to worry that much. But if you are getting those questions which you already studied as wrong, then you need to worry in that case. Similarly, when we are using institute test series, it is very important that we learn time management from it. We are giving an institute test series, we need to finish it within 1 hour 50 minutes, 1 hour 55 minutes, because the actual UPSC paper could be difficult than the institute paper. So we need to keep that 5 minutes extra. Also, when we are giving an institute test series, please ensure that whenever you are giving mocks, you are marking it in a OMR, because aspirants tend to tick mark. So when we actually solve the questions using OMR in the actual paper, it will take us 5 minutes just to mark the OMRs from 1 to 100. So in that 5 minutes, we will not be able to answer the 3 to 4 questions in the actual UPSC exam. So please try to practice your mocks in the similar conditions as you will be doing for the UPSC paper. So time management is one thing. Another thing is the knowledge. In the institute paper, you will come across important concepts and important facts related to that concept. Now we know in geography that tsunami, climatology, ocean currents are important facts, important concepts. So if there is any important fact related to the important concept, please make a note of it and add it to your knowledge. But if it is less important, for instance, there is some body which is not that known and it is coming up with that report, it is coming up with a certain report, do we need to remember it? I personally would suggest no, because the chances of asking that question is very less in UPSC, and like we know, our ability to remember or memorize is very limited. So let us use it very judiciously. Similarly, like I said, we need to add knowledge from the institute paper only about the important concepts. I myself remember making a mistake during the early years of my preparation, where there was an institute test series which was solely dedicated for economic survey and budget, and whatever new facts were there in economic survey and budget in that test series, I tried to mug up each of those things, but none of those was asked in the UPSC paper, and to mug up that thing I took 2 days. So it was a complete waste. So please use your memory judiciously. Also guesswork, but this is limited. Like I said, from the institutes, you need to learn time management, you need to learn important knowledge, and you need to learn what is that way you will be attending to the paper, and guesswork you need to do, but on a limited extent. Like I said, because the institute way of thinking and UPSC way of thinking might differ in certain cases. Do not dwell too much into it. If you get low, just see what is the reason for getting low scores. Is it because of the knowledge or is it because of the guesswork? If it's knowledge only, then you need to worry more. Then also another important suggestion, limit the number of institute tests. So there is this concept called paradox of plenty, where the aspirant, despite having knowledge by solving so many institute paper, could fail in the actual prelims. Why does this happen? See, if we 6 to 7 institutes paper, then each of those institutes may bring in a different pattern of thinking, and you yourself might get confused as to what is that way that I need to think when when I am addressing the analytical questions or unknown questions. So it is generally recommended that you give 3 to 4 institute tests, that to around 2 sectional institutes, and the other 3 to 4 full length you could give from other institutes. So do not try to burden yourself by giving tests of too many institutes and not getting a clear direction. Moving ahead, generally we know that re-revising, studying again the static becomes monotonous after some time, but current affairs brings fresh air. So aspirants tend to study more current affairs and focus less on the static, because static gets monotonous. So but you need to realize that in general there is less emphasis given to current affairs both in prelims as well as mains. So since there are less number of questions asked, we need not dwell too much or too deep into the current affairs. There are times that though questions come from current affairs, they are not covered by the routine magazines. If you have to illustrate this, if you see 23, 24 UPSC PYQ, there are so many questions asked over the environmental initiatives which has happened, and those environmental initiatives or conferences that were asked were not even covered in any routine books that we studied, because every year there will be 30, 40 initiatives, programs that will be happening, and each of those will have their own aim, objective, and the things they want to do, and it will be launched by different bodies. So we cannot try to remember each of those things. So despite giving a number of attention for current affairs, there is good chance that UPSC will come up with something which we have not studied. Also there was a question on science and tech. If you have to illustrate more, there was a question on augmented reality and virtual reality. So when UPSC had asked it, prior to that no institute had printed material over augmented and virtual reality, but when UPSC asked it, in the next year institutes started printing it. So despite giving good amount of time for current affairs, the returns may not be proportional as it is for the static. But there is another thing which we need to do. Current affairs is not that important, but there are certain areas where current affairs needs to be given importance. So what are those areas? See, whenever a topic is linked to the static and there is new current affair or new updates over the static part, that becomes important. If I have to give an instance, we know that Ramsar site is a very important topic in environment, both for prelims as well as mains. For mains, because in the year 2023 they are directly asked name the important Ramsar sites in India. So Ramsar site updation. So Ramsar sites gets updated. In the year 2022 there was around 35 Ramsar sites. Now there are 94. So what is that new Ramsar site which has got recently added? In which state does it lie? So these are the updates that we need to know. Similarly, current affairs is important when we need to know about the international organizations with respect to who are the new members that got joined. I remember last year itself, in the year 2025, there was a question over BIMSTEC, and first statement in it said that as of January 2025, that these are the number of members in it. So someone who has an awareness of the number of members in the BIMSTEC, or who has awareness as to who is the new member who got added to the already existing members in the BIMSTEC, that person would be able to answer this question. So if I have to sum it up in a simple word, current affairs is important when it comes to science and tech, IR and environment, because in the case of economy there is more conceptual part that is been asked, and in other subjects also there is more lean over the static part. So if you have less time over current affairs, then do not get tensed about, try rather to finish these 3 subjects. IR, because international organizations, new members, these sort of questions could be asked. In environment, new Ramsar sites, these sort of questions. And in science and tech, there could be some new technology that could be asked, like there are new developments such as 4D printing, 6G technology, and these sort of things. So UPSC could ask these sort of questions. So current affairs importance to these 3 subjects. Moving on. So when is that you need to exclusively start preparing? I've also spoken about in the last video. 4 months is strongly suggested for the first timers and also for people who have not yet cleared prelims. Also, if you're giving 3 to 2 months for the prelims preparation, it works, but it is upon your own risk. The chances that you'll clear is more when you give 4 months of preparation rather than giving 2 months of preparation. Like I said, your probability of clearing when you're giving 4 months is more than 2 months. And another important thing that we need to analyze is, there is always this debate of luck versus hard work. We need to analyze that it is only hard work which is in our hands. luck is not in a hand, and luck in general, luck does not favor everyone. So if you are relying more on luck, then even with less number of time you can clear prelims. But if you are relying more on hard work, then give good number of time for prelims, get a control over it. So on the day of the exam, even if luck does not favor you, your name will be in the prelims cleared list. Also, we need to understand that all are different. Do not try to blindly imitate others. Everyone has their different strengths. There are friends with good memory. There are friends who are do not have good memory but have a very good analytical understanding. There are friends who are very good at critical thinking and brainstorming on spot when they are giving the test. So each of us have different strengths. Try to know what is your strength and capitalize upon it. Do not try to blindly follow what others have done. So that is why in the previous slides I have spoken that try to adopt a strategy that has worked for 70% of the students, not to that 30% minority. This was the video which was dedicated to comprehensive prelim strategy. I tried to cover the common doubts which the aspirants have, and I feel that I have addressed each of those in detail. So a word of advice, it is high time that you start preparing for prelims. Prelims is getting tougher and tougher, as you yourself know, and whenever you are studying prelims, please try to study it from a broader perspective. The more broader you think and the more analytical you become, it will be very easy for you to capitalize on the prelims. Wishing all of you all the best. Thank you for watching.